and welcome, perfect, and welcome to anybody that's new to the webinars. I'm just going to minimize that. Now, today we're going to be talking about dealing with challenging people. And this is always a popular topic because of the time frame that we have. Today what I thought we would do is I would go back to some fundamentals and I would go back to just generic examples. If you have any specific questions about your situations, then that is something that you can either type in, and Kerry will read those back a little bit later at the end of the webinar, or it's something that we can look at progressing in 2016. So if there are very specific topics that you would like to cover around dealing with challenging people, we certainly can look at doing that down the track. Gary mentioned the feedback forms. We would love for you to fill out the feedback forms. Gives me some feedback as well about what I can do differently and what's working well for you. But also we would love to hear back from you about what it is that you would like to see in 2016. So if there's, if there are particular topics that you would like to cover, then we would be delighted to see those. Now, so today, as I mentioned, dealing with challenging people, we're going to talk about what is a challenging person, the types of challenging people, and we're going to cover sort of a broad section. There'll be about 3 or 4 different types of challenging people that we're going to be looking at today. Again, if you have very specific examples that you'd like me to talk about, then please feel free to type those questions in. We're going to be talking about practical strategies for dealing with those different types of people, and then I'm going to, at the end, touch on a plan for dealing with challenging people, because I think we all need a bit of a plan. And not that we hope or expect for any of our customers or clients or suppliers to be challenging, but they do sometimes happen. So today I'd like you to start to think about, well, what is a challenging person? What's a challenging person to you? And I think that that's really important, because challenging people, they're different for everybody. So in our work lives and in our personal lives, we often describe people as challenging or difficult, but different people find different types of people difficult to deal with. So a challenging person is simply a person we find challenging to deal with ourselves. And some personality types might be difficult, some situations might be difficult or challenging. But they may not be so challenging for others. It might just be our situation, what's happening to us at the time. So we need to also be very mindful of what's happening to us and why is this person being challenging to us. Is it really me or is it really them? So this is twofold. So we're going to explore some of those areas as we go this morning or this afternoon. Now, one of the things that I like to see, and I like to highlight for people, and you will see this often when I do any type of facilitation or training, I often show this picture of the gift. Now, I think that all complaints, all difficult people, all challenging situations are a gift. And sometimes that's difficult to see. Sometimes it's really difficult to recognize that this is a gift. But the gift is the opportunity to wow the customer. The gift is the opportunity to change perhaps something that you've done. Perhaps it's your initial communication that has made the situation challenging, or the lack of your initial communication that has made the situation challenging. And so I like for people to see that often that this is a gift or an opportunity to change or do something to wow that customer or to wow that client or to wow that supplier, so that they want to then recommend you to others, that they want to continue to use you, and they want the experience to be a happy one. So we all know that sometimes there are difficult situations, but really, if we turn our thinking around and go, okay, what is it that I might be doing, or what opportunity can I find in this situation, then perhaps sometimes the challenge or the difficulty becomes minimalized. So this is an activity that normally we get people to do in a face-to-face situation, and I don't expect for you to write anything down. You might want to, but I'd really like for you to think about a challenging person that you have to deal with, or that you are currently dealing with in the course of your work. And the reason why I get people to think about this is so that if you think about it, then it makes it easier to work on strategies to, you know, to help minimize the difficulty, or to look into what is it that I can do to make this situation a more pleasant one. So that's just for you to do, to think about, well, what is it, or who is it that is making my life difficult, or who is it that I am finding challenging at the moment, or who do I find challenging on a regular basis? Or is it the type of person? Is there a type of person that I find challenging? Is it angry people that I don't know how to deal with? Is it people that are very talkative? So there are so many different types of challenging people, and like I said, each person will have a different type of challenge with different types of people. So one of the things that I like to get people to think about is why we might find people challenging. So people often have difficulty coping with challenging behaviours because they feel personally threatened or fear for their safety, and find it difficult to concentrate on performing their normal duties under these conditions. In such situations, people also may feel out of control, and again, this can lead to difficulty in maintaining a professional image and performing the work tasks that are required of them or required of you. So if we feel hurt or upset during an interaction, we are unlikely to feel competent or confident. So if we feel that we are unable to communicate effectively, or that we're unable to meet the needs for some reason, so that meet the needs of the customer for some reason, we can also doubt our competence in handling the situation. Now, if you're feeling threatened by someone at work or on the work site, or when you're working with suppliers, or fear for your safety, you may decide to raise this with, for those of you who are working in a larger organisation, you may want to raise this with a human resources representative or your manager, because you're all entitled to feel safe at work. So even if you are working one-on-one with a client and you don't feel like you are in control of the situation, it may also be advisable that you have somebody else come into your meetings so that you can feel more confident about addressing the situation. But it is really important to have a think about, why is it that you might find some people challenging? So on the screen you can see there that, is it fear, is it the control level, is it your difficulty in communicating? Now, and are you feeling like you can't meet the person's needs, or you don't want to hurt their feelings? So if any of those are applicable, and it's really important that you identify what's going on with you first before you address what's going on with the customer. So if that is the case, then it is really important that you think about, okay, well, if I'm finding things difficult around the communication style, what is it that I can do differently to backtrack? So perhaps I need to ask more open questions, which is what we were talking about. Perhaps I need to show or demonstrate more empathy. Am I really listening or demonstrating that I'm listening to the customer? So it's important that we look at those aspects first. Now, ask yourself these questions here. So do you find yourself encountering more and more people who are uncompromising, overbearing, resentful, uncooperative, manipulative, or just plain pushy. And sometimes we find that with society, and what's going on with society now is that everything is so much faster and people are more demanding. So if you want to foster effective communication with challenging people, first realize that you only have control over your own behaviour. And I think that that's really important. You can't control how someone else acts, but you certainly can influence to some degree how they respond to you. So often the key is to set the example. So in other words, don't tell someone to calm down, demonstrate how to talk and how to behave in a calm way. And so if you can demonstrate that, then people will start to mirror you. When dealing with challenging people, it is also important to accept the fact that two-way communication is probably not part of their agenda. So for example, when you first encounter someone who feels angry or upset, it's sometimes hard to get a word in. Then when you do finally have the opportunity to speak, the other person is usually or may seem unwilling to listen. And that might sound familiar to you with some of your experiences. So when we're talking about difficult behaviour, today we're talking about people in the workplace, but difficult behaviour and all of the communication strategies that we have been covering over the last 3 weeks, they're applicable to people at work, but also to our family members and perhaps even our friends and colleagues. The following part of this session is going to focus on different types of challenging people and some practical strategies to help you be as effective as you can be in dealing with each person in those difficult situations. So let's have a look at different types of challenging people. Now we're going to be talking about an angry customer, sometimes a talkative customer, and talkative customers can be those angry customers as well, but sometimes those talkative customers are the ones that just take up too much of your time. Or last week, one of the participants was saying that their customers ring him after his work hours or not during his working hours, and that could also make them talkative, and if he's trying to get them off the phone, then how do we do that? There are also those complaining and negative customers that, where things just never go right. We also then have the demanding customer, and I'm sure that there are many of you that encounter that. Again, when I'm using the word customer here, you can say person, you can say family member, you can say, you can say colleague in any of those situations as well. So let's begin with the first one here. Now, angry people. So angry people are the people that they attempt to assume a powerful position and they want to put others down. So this is sometimes where people feel, or you may feel, a little bit out of control because the angry person or the angry customer is assuming that controlling position. Now these people are usually very quick to anger, so they, what we normally call, have a short fuse. They are unpredictable and you don't know when they are going to blow that fuse. And they do tend to be quite critical of any idea or action. Often you'll find that people, and we find that people are angry in certain situations, but you may find that you're dealing with somebody that is always angry, that is always aggressive, and that may lead to you finding going to your work or going to your job site or going to your office just unpleasant. So how is it that we can start to deal with these people? So this is one of the reasons why I strongly encourage everybody to listen to Webinar 1 and Webinar 2 around communication strategies and communication strategies next step. It's because really the fundamentals of responding to anybody in challenging situations is to listen. So, and that is one of the key strategies of really effective or highly effective communication skills. So if you can find ways of hearing and acknowledging the person's needs, then that is really important. When we are talking about effective listening means that you respond or you summarize or you acknowledge through empathy what it is that the person has said. You also have to mirror a little bit their heightened level of emotion. So you would never sort of mirror all the way up, but you also want them to, you wouldn't want to say to them, oh, it sounds like you're really upset, when they are really screaming at you. So you would want to change your mirroring or your acknowledging to something along the lines of, gosh, you sound really frustrated by this situation, or this sounds like a really difficult situation for you, Barry, for example. So you really want to change your tone as well. You also want to be able to, if you can respond in this way, explain the limits of your role and set boundaries. Sometimes we find that if you haven't had great conversations from the beginning of a project, then and you haven't set the boundaries early on, so you haven't asked the questions around how are we going to communicate? If things do escalate, what are we going to do? If you haven't set those boundaries early in your working relationship, then it becomes more and more difficult to deal with people. But it's always a good time to have those conversations. Probably not whilst the person is in the middle of ranting and raving and screaming, but certainly afterwards when things have calmed down, say to the person, I think we need to talk about how we do communicate in the future so that we don't have these blowouts in the future. You should
Hi Gab, I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you at the moment, so just check if you've clicked on mute at all.
If you can, yes.
Oh, sorry, I just didn't hear you. I just didn't hear you for a little while there, so I don't know. Maybe it was just me. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You can everybody can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Sorry.
Perfect. What I was just saying is that you want to use a calm and assertive approach. And remember, calm means that you are still in control, and so does assertive. So you are in control of that situation. Where possible, when you're responding to an angry person, if you can, you want to propose a plan of action about what we can do about the current situation, but also about future situations so that we don't have this happening again. Continuing on from that, you want to be able to repeat calmly what you can do for them. And remember, we were talking about using positive language. Where possible, use as much positive language and tell the person what you can do rather than what you can't do. Because usually an angry person is hearing or seeing things that can't happen or that won't happen or haven't happened, and so they become angry. That's not always the case, clearly, but that is usually what happens, and people get frustrated, and so that is what they then lash out, or they use anger as a coping mechanism. Now, if you can use positive language and you can go back to and start to think about, am I using the words such as can do, will do, let's have a look at, let's work together on what we can do and how we can do it, then you are more likely to be able to diffuse somebody in that angry situation. Request strongly but quietly that your responses be heard. So often angry people don't want to listen, or they might let you listen. They might let you speak for a short period of time, but if it's not meeting exactly what they want to hear then and there, then they will talk over you. So really, when you are talking about dealing with an angry person, make sure that you are calm, quiet, but that you are requesting that they are listening to what you have to say. And sometimes you might just need to stop and let them talk and acknowledge what they're saying, and then once they have finished, ask them if it's okay for you to continue to speak. Remember to avoid criticizing the person, and because once you start to criticize or once you start to use emotional language, then it will become very difficult for the angry person necessarily to stay calm. It's sometimes a really good strategy. I will listen to you and I will take down all the notes that I need to take down, and I would like to, and I will acknowledge what I've heard. But I think it might be appropriate for us to reconvene in half an hour or in half a day and we can then discuss more calmly what it is that we're going to do about the next steps. Sometimes angry people just need to get it off their chests, and then we can continue a conversation that is far more rational. One of the things that I highly recommend to you, and we talked about in the emailing segment last week, is that you document all of the things. So write down as many notes as you can about a situation and then send a confirmation email. So emailing or writing may not be your best or strongest skill, but it is still one thing that you should certainly follow up with. So follow up with emails or confirmations of the last conversation that you had with people, particularly if people are angry or feeling really emotional about a particular situation. Now, there are some specific strategies that we can use, and I'm going to go through these with you. So the first one here is the dripping tap or broken record. Now, this, you be gentle about how you use this and be careful about when you use this. But one of the things that we find very effective when we are dealing with somebody who is really irrational and irate is to repeat the key phrase that you were trying to make. So repeat it over and over until the other person acknowledges it. So once they've acknowledged it, then you know that they've started to hear you. So use an assertive tone of voice, focusing on the facts of the situation rather than any personal issues. Like I mentioned before, if you start to get personal and use emotional language, then the person is going to find it very difficult to remain calm or to become calm. Do not let yourself become sidetracked and trying to maintain a calm composure. Often when you get into a heated discussion or an argument, other things come into play. So it might be a heated argument about topic A, but then topic B, C, D, E, and F are brought up as well. Really try to keep it on track. So if you are going to repeat a particular phrase over and over or repeat a particular theme, then keep it about topic A and then address topic B, C, D, E, and F later on. Certainly make notes about the other topics and make notes about topic A, but really focus on topic A. Acknowledge that you have heard that the person has brought up B, C, D, E, and F, but then say, let's park those and we can come back to those later on. The next strategy that you can use is using I language. So when speaking with angry people, avoid blaming the other person. If you wish to let the other person know your needs, it's possible to do this without using blaming language. So rather than saying, you make me frustrated when you talk to me like that, that language is accusatory and blaming. It is more appropriate to frame your sentences in terms of accepting responsibility for your feelings. So an example of that would be that you could say, I feel frustrated when I don't have the opportunity to give my point of view. So let me say that again. So instead of saying, you make me frustrated when you talk like that, take responsibility for your feelings and how you're feeling and say, I feel frustrated when I don't have the opportunity to give my point of view. This technique acknowledges that you are responsible for your own feelings. If you adopt a blaming attitude, like you are more likely to feed into the other person's aggression. So remember to remain calm under the pressure. Most of us have the capacity to remain calm most of the time. The true test of our skill is how we react in the heat of the moment. So when you are placed in a situation where you feel really threatened or at risk of losing control, it is important to focus on your techniques for managing your emotions and behaviours. It is important that before you take any action, you consider the consequences of that action. So have a think about, if I lash out now, what will that do? How will that end, or how will this conversation end? If you act on impulse without carefully considering the consequences of your action, you might find yourself exacerbating the situation. It's also important to think carefully before you speak. So try to keep your speech controlled and direct, and consider the consequences of any statements you make. So we often recommend that deep breathing is a good technique for helping us to remain calm when under pressure. This is a proven technique. This is psychologically proven that if you take deep breaths and slow down, you will remain much calmer. So taking a deep breath before speaking can assist in us having, clearing our minds and regaining control, and preventing us saying something defensive or provocative that we may regret later on. What it also does is it slows down what's going on in our minds, and it slows down what's coming out of our mouths. So if we can slow everything down, we can think about what we're saying. At all times during the interaction, remain focused on the outcomes that you desire from the situation. So make sure that you know what it is that you want to achieve in any particular situation. It's easy to become sidetracked or to become caught up in trying to create a good impression of yourself. And sometimes we forget the goals that you are actually trying to, by having this interaction, which has potentially made somebody angry. Although it is important to remain calm when you're under pressure, it is important not to appear indifferent if you feel threatened. So if you appear threatened or indifferent, a person is likely to feel frustrated and angry and may try to gain your attention by using even more aggressive techniques, and that's usually when they start to become critical and they start to use that you language. So always try to appear alert by making eye contact and responding appropriately to their speaking to show that you are really interested. So if you start to switch off, that can become really dismissive, and then that will really incite people. So demonstrate a calm composure by keeping the pace and the tone of your speech controlled, and the breathing and your breathing really controlled and calm. So that's sort of around the I and the calming response. And it really is very important that you take stock about how you are responding. I think it's really, really important that if you say, okay, what is my responsibility in this situation? Am I responsible? Is this a gift? Is this an opportunity that I can say thank you for? So when, and as I was mentioning before, I want you to think about angry people or difficult situations or difficult customers as gifts or opportunities, because when you do get that gift to change something about what you do for a future situation, it's your time really to say thank you. And so if somebody is really angry, sometimes it's actually appropriate and can actually be quite good for the person to hear you say, gosh, look, this is really frustrating for you. I really can hear it, or I can really see how angry you are about this situation. But I really want to thank you for the opportunity of you bringing this up with me so that we can work on this together. Now, one of the things to remember when we're talking about dealing with angry people is things that we should avoid doing. So really avoid believing that it's a personal attack. A lot of times it's not about you, it's about the situation. Don't put yourself down, don't give up too easily, and don't get involved in those angry arguments. It's also important that you don't avoid the person, because it makes them feel powerful. And sometimes when we have, when we're working with difficult people, we tend to try and avoid them, or we tend to try and avoid the situation. If you do that, you are demonstrating, or you are handing over the controls. You are handing over your keys of control to that person. So often it's better to stand up to the person, or it's often better to have a calm and rational conversation where possible, so that you can clear the air. Now, the next type of difficult or challenging people that we're going to be talking about are the talkative people. Now, they can sometimes be really nice and energetic, but they can be really frustrating because they are taking up a lot of your time. And if you have got very time-sensitive projects going on, which many of you would have, then you want to be able to manage these people really well. So I'm going to just talk to you now about some strategies for talkative people. And normally I would not suggest this. Normally I am a huge advocate for asking open questions, but open questions, you may remember from our communication strategies webinar, open questions really allow for people to give you as much information as possible. And that is really important, even with angry people, at the beginning of projects, when you want to find out how people are finding projects going, what their status is, then you would ask lots of open questions. However, when we're talking about talkative people and shutting those conversations down a little bit, you want to start to ask closed questions as much as possible. And those questions, remember, closed questions are yes/no questions, so they give you yes/no answers. They give you limited choice answers, so do you prefer Monday or Tuesday? So limited choice, or single quantifiable facts. You know, we don't recommend that you interrupt often when people are talking, because that doesn't demonstrate that you are listening. However, if you do want somebody to move on, you might need to interrupt assertively during small pauses in that person's speech. And the best way that I know how to do this is to use the person's name. So it's really important, we were talking about using positive language, but using the person's name to help them get back on track. So Barry, it sounds like you had a really fantastic holiday. Can we talk about how we are progressing with this particular project, or can we talk about X? Or can I give you a call next week to discuss this further? Avoid using encouragers such as the mm-hs and nodding. So we call the mm-hs and ahas, we call those the verbal nods, particularly if you are on the telephone. You want to avoid sidetracking, so make sure that the person stays with the discussion that you want to focus on. So, you know, if you want to say to the person, oh, Barry, that sounds like a really interesting holiday experience. Can we talk about that later on? Today I really want to talk to you about X project or whatever it is that's going on. Now, when we're talking about talkative people, you want to end conversations politely, and we're saying you want to be able to wait for the pause, summarize what they've said, and this is just what I've demonstrated. It's all about showing that you have listened to them, that you can empathize with them. So remember, empathy is about demonstrating some sort of, or acknowledging some sort of feeling. So it sounds like a really exciting holiday. And then finding an appropriate closing statement. So thank you, I will follow up with you tomorrow. The whole time you want to be saying to this person, or you want to be demonstrating as much as possible that you are a good listener, because people want to feel like they are being listened to, albeit it might be difficult or challenging for you to give them all the time that they want. Now, the next strategy that we're going to look at is for demanding people. Now, these people want to discuss the facts now. They have a problem or a demand, and they want immediate action. So everything is about now, now, now. These people may not necessarily be angry or threatening, but you may sometimes feel overwhelmed or disempowered by these people because they are in your face. And so what we want to do is we want to have a think about how is it that we can deal with these people. So again, your listening skills are highly, highly important. Make sure you are taking notes about what it is that the person is demanding of you at that particular time. If there is more than one issue, then try to focus on one issue at a time rather than many. But if there are many, then make sure that you have jotted down all of them so that you can come back to each issue and deal with them specifically. When you are talking about demanding people, they're not angry, they just want to know how it's going to work. And sometimes it's because of their personality type that they are just very direct, and so they want to know what's going to happen next. So always explain the steps that you will take to achieve the desired outcomes that they are looking for or that you are hoping to achieve as well. Now, if people are complaining or being negative, then again, try not to take it personally. Remind yourself that we need people to challenge things. We need people to be complaining, and sometimes we need people to be negative. And when we say negative, we don't mean them to be upsetting, but these are people that challenge us. These are people that challenge situations, and they're great to have on the team sometimes because they help us to question things. They help us to improve situations. Now remember, if people are complaining or negative, then remember a complaint, again, is a gift. It's an opportunity for us to look at something differently, and an opportunity for us to wow them with our techniques too. To change the way they perceive us, or to change their perception of the situation. So more strategies for complaining or negative people is to try and identify the problem as soon as possible. So are they being, is there a particular issue, and make sure that you are as objective as possible. So don't listen to the emotional side of the complaint. So is there something genuinely that needs to be fixed? Sometimes people are complaining or negative, and I know when I have worked with teams, and I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people, sometimes people are negative or complaining because they just want to vent their feelings before they're even prepared to discuss any issue. So sometimes it's okay to acknowledge that this is just an opportunity for people to vent and to get their complaints out there in the emotion, out there. Sorry. Now, when you are dealing with those types of people, make sure that you are clear and articulate on what your boundaries are. Remain professional and say to that person, okay, at some point we want to talk about a solution to this, but I would like to also let you vent and air your complaints initially. So, but then we want to be able to talk about some sort of solution. So really focus on the solution part and the objectives that you have of that particular, for that particular conversation. Remember, do not be defensive. Empathize with the person, so imagine how it feels for that person. Remember to use it sounds like or it looks like as your sentence starter in those situations. Take a problem-solving approach. Classify the details of the problem, so go back and check in that you have understood all of the facts from the person and that they have understood all of the facts. Instead of, remember I said last week, instead of saying I'm sorry about that, you don't want to say I'm sorry about somebody to somebody who's complaining straight away. You want to wait and you want to say thanks for letting me know, let's investigate that further. And always be a positive role model. So always make sure that you remain calm in the situation, even if you want to start screaming, or even if you want to slam the phone down, or even if you want to walk away. So really be a great role model in that situation. Now, there's some strategies for, and they're general strategies for how you can deal with different types of people. So complaining and negative and talkative and angry. What I'd like to also now talk to you about is setting a plan for yourself for dealing with challenging people. And it doesn't have to be limited to those 3 or 4 categories that we were talking about earlier. It can be whatever type of challenging person that you come across. Now, the danger of dealing with people is we make it personal when we shouldn't be. So when we're dealing with challenging people, we sometimes make it or take it too personally. For the difficult or challenging people in your life, the truth is their behaviours are what you don't like. So it's something about what you don't like in them. So separating the people from their behaviours can be the key to your success. So really when we're talking about this is remember you might like the person and really everybody has got a good side to them. It's just sometimes their behaviours that we find difficult. So if you can separate the behaviours from the people, then you can really find hopefully a happy ending to and a quick happy ending to these challenging situations. Now, I want to talk to you about recognizing your emotions. Now, emotions are a trigger to tell you that you need to deal with something. So really deal with it. Ask what behavior is causing me to feel this way? Like what is it that's triggering in me? So be specific and make sure you separate the behavior from how you feel about the person, and this will help you in your interactions later on. Be aware of your self-talk. So self-talk is what we say to ourselves about what we're experiencing. So it can either be realistic or unrealistic. So if we talk to ourselves rationally about how things really are, we can understand, accept and behave appropriately. However, if we're talking to ourselves irrationally about how things should be or ought to be, we might feel very uncomfortable or upset in that particular situation. So by changing irrational self-talk to more rational self-talk, we can feel more comfortable about what has happened and about ourselves, and we can choose how to act. Now, when we're talking about engaging in constructive dialogue, remember one of the things that you should plan for is remember to be patient, don't argue. Let the other person know that you're actively listening and trying to understand and model effective communication. Now, the other thing that I think is really important is you should, when you're trying to deal with challenging people overall, and you know that sometimes that you feel intimidated by certain people or by a lot of people, then you want to really skill up in your assertiveness. So assertive behaviour involves stating your own needs clearly, standing up for your own rights, but at the same time considering the needs and the rights of others. So practice using your I statements. One technique that is, really useful in communicating assertively is to use those I statements. And so that's when you say, I feel, rather than you're making me feel. This involves communicating how you feel about something. One of the things another example around that we could say is, you make me angry when you do that, is probably not the most appropriate way. The more appropriate way would be, I feel angry when you do that. So let me say that again. Instead of saying you make me angry when you do that, say I feel angry when you do that. You can even take that a step further by stating what you would prefer the other person to do. So you could tell the person the preferred alternative behaviour. So for example, you could state, I feel angry when I would prefer it if you could do X, because then I can, and then you can go on and tell them what it is. So again, you could say, I feel angry when I would prefer it if you could, because then I can. The other person is less likely to become defensive if you use this style of communication. This is also used. This technique is also used in couples counselling. So this is seen. We use this, and if you've ever been to couples counselling, then you may have seen this technique used. The other person is therefore, it's usually they're more likely to listen to your needs, and they're more likely to want to consider your needs and feel their needs considered as well. Lastly, I wanted to say here about reconfirming your existing or set new expectations. So was there ever an expectation put in place? So are you able to reconfirm your expectations around how you communicate with each other, or what it is that the person is communicating about? So more often than not, we think the only reason people don't act the way we want is that we've never asked for it in a way they've understood. So don't fall into the trap of they must know, or who wouldn't know that? You wouldn't want to be blindsided by somebody. So give the person a chance to succeed. So when in doubt, make sure that you reconfirm your expectations with them. And if you've never set any expectations about how you're going to communicate or how you're going to deal with a situation, it's really important that you make the time to sit down and talk about that. Ask those open questions so that you can have a better discussion or have a better ongoing relationship with that particular person. So that's there's sort of some tips around a plan for dealing with challenging people. When you think back to that person that you were thinking about in your situation, and that original activity about who is a challenging or difficult person for you now, again, you might want to write this down, or you might want to think about this later on. But based on some of the things that we talked about, think about what are some of the strategies that you would use to deal with this person moving forward. What are some of the things that you can do? There are more strategies that we can talk about, and there are more things that we can do around dealing with challenging people or handling difficult customers, and that's something that we will look at in 2016. But again, please, if you would like to see more information or more things around real life examples, more webinars around real life examples in the new year, then please write those down in the feedback form so that so that Kerry can work on putting those together. So just again, one of the things that I like to take you through is just remember, what are some of your powerful insights from today? what will you do differently? And I highly recommend that if you've made any notes from today, then read over those notes. It will help you cement some of the information that we've covered. Sometimes it might be a good idea to go back and listen to the webinar again and to look at the slides as you go through. And practice on somebody. So have a go. It's not ideal. It's not ideal that you practice on angry or irate customers or difficult or challenging people, but that is the best time to have a go, and maybe practice at home as well if you are having an argument with somebody at home, and perhaps that might hold you in good stead. It might give you some good tips and hints on what you can do with perhaps some of the difficult or challenging customers that you have. Now, again, please like us on Facebook. So Better Off with Learning is on Facebook. If you would like to get more information, and we do talk about lots of tips and hints for communication in the workplace. So please like us on Facebook. And also, if anybody would like to link in with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. So Gabriella Horak on LinkedIn. Again, please send us your feedback. What would you like training on? And as Kerry mentioned, the slides and the webinar will be on the HIA website in the member section in the next day or so. Now that leaves us a few minutes for anybody to ask questions, or for Kerry to read back some of the questions.
Thanks for that.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for that, Gab. I have got a few questions coming through, and Hassan asked quite early on about how to maintain control of a meeting or a phone call with a client who likes to talk a lot and go off on tangents without offending them or seeming to shut them down. And I think you did touch on that throughout the presentation, but I guess that bit about how do you do it without offending or giving the impression you're shutting them down?
Yeah, that is a great question. Thanks, Hassan. Look, I think the best way to do that is, if you have got that talkative customer, is without offending them, the best way to do that is to use their name and to acknowledge that you have heard them, and to acknowledge that and summarize in some way what it is that they've spoken about. But usually the best way I find is to start my sentence off with, it sounds like a really exciting situation, or it sounds like a really challenging situation, and then summarize what the challenging situation was, and then say, well, I'd love to hear more about that, Barry, but right now what I'd really like for us to do is talk about X, whatever it is that you want to talk about. If you acknowledge somebody, then they will get back on track, and they will really appreciate it. So you'll find that technique works more often than not. We usually find that very successful. I hope that answers the question, Hassan.
Great. Now Patrick has asked, and I think this came in while you were talking about angry people, what do you do if what they are saying is just not true? So if they're saying untrue things, what can you do?
Right. So, and that's another great. That is another great question. So, it's with untrue things where you know that one thing to be right, and whereas the customer thinks that they are right. It's great to say to them that you have understood and that you have heard what they're saying. So repeat back to them and say, I would say something like, my sentence starter might be, so that I have this correct, your understanding, Barry, is that this was going to be like X, Y, and Z. So I would be acknowledging the untruths. So saying your understanding is X, Y, and Z, and then asking the question around, saying, can you please tell me why that is your understanding, or how did you come to have that understanding? So ask an open question around, please tell me why you believe that to be true, or how did you come to have that understanding? If you ask those open questions of the customer, then you can get more information from them about how they came to that solution, and then you can better acknowledge or work on telling them what the true thing is. But if you just stand there and say that is not true, then you will have a standoff and you will have a very angry customer. So I do hope that that answers your question, Patrick.
Okay, and Phil has asked, what style of language can you suggest for dealing with the school teacher type client? That is, they know it all.
So, yes, they're the people that have been there, done that, and they're the ones who should be doing your job, apparently. And again, I think these people like to have, the school teacher person is the person that likes to feel like they are in control of a situation. So you've got to, everything that, you've got to do as much as you can in your power to give them that control. So use language that's that hands the controlling back to them, and sometimes limited choice questions are really good. So which do you prefer, or what do you think would work better, this or this? But give them limited choices, because that's where they feel like they're in control. What I would also be doing is I would be opening it up to them and saying, tell me more about what you think. And this is about really setting up the situation. So tell me more about what you think about this situation, Mary or Barry, so that you have a better understanding of where they're at. So if they feel like that they've given you all of the information that they can, and that they feel like that you're interested in all of their information, they are more likely to hand over the control back to you when you've demonstrated that you are willing to hear what it is that they're saying. And again, every time they are putting you in an awkward situation, I would thank them. Say, thank you so much for the feedback, even though you're standing there gritting your teeth. But thank them for the opportunity to try to help them. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of people are standing with gritted teeth often when you're dealing with challenging people. Phil also asked, how do you best correct the client? For example, when their knowledge or understanding is technically incorrect on, say, rules and regulations?
Yes, so that could also be around that untrue thing. So checking in on their understanding and how they came to have that understanding. So acknowledging that they have, acknowledging that you have heard what they have said. So I appreciate what you have said about X, and that your understanding of X is this. Please tell me a little bit more about how you've come to understand that, because they might then say to you, if that opens up a whole bunch of information. They might say to you, oh, my brother-in-law did that, in 1964, and things have changed since 1964. So it's good to have an understanding of why they have this knowledge, or where they've got this knowledge from around the rules and regulations. Once they feel like you have heard why or where they've got that information from, then it's much easier for you to go back and say to them, look, I appreciate that's what you have had, but let me show you, or let me tell to you about what the rules are and when those rules have changed. So really, people just want to be heard. When people are angry, upset, and this is the same for couples counselling, one of the biggest things that we hear about in coaching situations or mediations of any type is people saying, they do not listen to me. And it's not that they haven't been heard, but we haven't acknowledged that we have listened to the person. So we haven't acknowledged their feelings, or we haven't said back to the person what it is that they have said to us. So hopefully, Phil, that answers your question.
Great. Now I just realised we're we've gone the hour, so if people have to shoot off, I understand. So just want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us for our last webinar this year. But we will be staying on the line for people if you do have any more specific questions. Stay on and just type those in now, and we will work through those. But if you do have to rush off, thanks again for joining us, and keep an eye out for webinars next year. Or if you do want to catch up on some webinars, have a look at the recorded ones on our website. We have a question from Margot. Margot's asked, can you please explain separate behaviours from the person? Aren't they one and the same?
Yes, that sometimes can be very difficult. Thanks, Margot, for that question. You might. So let me take it into a family situation. So if you've got a child or a niece or a nephew or a grandchild, you might like that person. You might love that person, and you might really, and hopefully you love that person. You love the person, but you don't like all of their behaviours. So, and that's where we have to address the behaviours that they're demonstrating rather than the person, because usually people are very good and you like the person, or you know that the person is a good person. They're just demonstrating a particular behaviour on that particular day that you don't like, or that does not match you. But when you look at that person, they are then demonstrating lots of other different behaviours that you do like. And so you do want to spend time with them, or, you know, it is easy to communicate with them. So yes, it's difficult sometimes to detach the person from the behaviours because we are made up of hundreds and hundreds of different behaviours. But remember that when we are looking at difficult behaviours or challenging behaviours, we really need to just isolate those challenging behaviours from the person overall. And yes, it's true, they are a person with lots and lots and lots of different behaviours making up that, you know, individual, but it's about really compartmentalising the behaviours that you don't like. So I hope that answers it, Margot, but you're probably right. It is challenging to work out what's the difference between the person and lots of different behaviours.
And I think that goes back a little bit to that. We had another question earlier. It is difficult to separate when somebody is saying they're angry and they're making comments, to not take it personally. I know I would find that difficult, and you know, even, you know, I know actors and that reading reviews, and they can have 100 great reviews, but the one negative review, and that's the one that will crush you. So any tips on how to separate yourself from feeling like it's all a personal attack?
Yes, and it's really about for the situation, you really have to work out what is it that the person is angry about. So are they angry about a particular thing? And generally people are angry about a particular thing, and then they take it out on you, and that's because they don't have a good control of their language, and so they then start using, you did this, you did that, or you can't ever do that right, or whatever the case may be. That may not be the case. It's just that they are reacting to a particular situation. So if you can weed out all the you, and say, okay, it's not about me, it's about a situation. What is the situation that they are angry or finding difficult? You know, is it that a delivery hasn't happened? Is it that is it that the floors haven't been done? Or is it that we're not on time? So is it the time that they're angry with, or is it you that they're angry with? And so you've really got to try and find out what is it specifically that they're angry about. So I think it's about working out what it is that it is in the situation. If you have made a mistake, then, and sometimes that is the case, and they are very specifically angry at you, then that's the time to, you know, eat humble pie and say, I'm really sorry, I've made a mistake, and I can appreciate why you're so angry about this. Sometimes it is about you, in that situation, but you do want to be able to think about, is it time, is it the floorboards, is it the delivery, is it another team member? You know, all of those things come into play. So work out what it is that you should be focusing on.
And I think you made an interesting point earlier about, I guess in a way you said not sort of shying away from the demanding person or the angry person, because I know I've found lately I am trying to move house and I'm trying to get answers from a removalist company, for example, and all I want them to do is to give me a call back and let me know some dates, and I don't think I'm usually a very demanding person, but I'm sure I'm escalating as the days go by and I don't get any word back. So perhaps a tip is that communication strategy we talked about earlier is making sure that you are communicating with people, because in my example, it's escalating now, and I would have been a very easy person to have dealt with 3 days ago, but not having a call back, it's now it's sort of getting to a point where I'm going to start sending emails. So
yes, it's very important to communicate with your customers. Most customers get angry or find things difficult because whatever's going on in their head is their number one priority. It might not be your number one. You've got about 200 other priorities going on, but they want you to acknowledge that their priority is important. And so it's really important to communicate as much as possible.
And I think even sometimes they may not have an answer for me yet, but I would prefer that I at least know that they've heard, as you say, heard me, and acknowledge that yes, they have heard me, haven't got an answer for me. I'd prefer that than silence. Margot just want to clarify. She asked the question before about behaviours and being separate from the person. So she just wanted to ask. So that's not giving them permission for bad behaviour, because we have to compartmentalise their behaviour.
Oh, absolutely. So it's never good to give permission to people to have bad behaviour. It's not that. Everybody can, if we think about things rationally. We all have control of our emotions. We all have control of how we react to a situation. So one of the things that I like to do, and this is something that I'll probably talk about in another webinar, but when nobody can make you angry. So let me repeat that. Nobody can make you angry. So nobody can make the customer angry. No situation can make the customer angry. The customer or you can allow yourself to get angry. All right, so there is really no excuse for people to demonstrate bad behaviour, because it's just demonstrating that they have lost control of how they are going to react to a situation. So once people realise that it's about their loss of control, then they start to realise that they should be changing their behaviours.
Yeah, and I guess that's always it's always a tricky one to acknowledge, isn't it? That it's how you react to a situation, and you can choose to go either way. So it's probably something people.
Yes, that's right.
It takes a bit of practice, because it's very easy to slip back into your old ways. So I know I do it myself.
That's exactly right.
I think we
we all do.
Especially when I'm driving my car, I do seem to that's the time I seem to react quickly to people, and I think we've come to the end of our questions, so unless somebody has one to type in very quickly, just wanted to thank you, Gabriella, and actually Danielle mentioned she just appreciates how you actually demonstrate the techniques you talked about today in the way that you answer the questions, and how you thank people for their questions. So I think it's one of those things where you need to practice it, and practice makes perfect, and make it a habit when you try and implement these. I know I'm still trying to implement some of the things we learned in the first and second webinar with the phone answering techniques. I do fall back into the way that I have done it for the last 13 years. I think I need to write myself out a little note and stick it near the phone, because I'm so easily to flip back into, hi, HIA, Kerry speaking, which, I know that's wrong. So, old habits die hard.
All the things. Yes, that's right. Put all the things that you want to do in front of you, not the things that you don't want to do, because your subconscious mind doesn't know doesn't differentiate. It'll only see the words that are in front of you. So the more stuff you put in front of yourself that you do want to do, and then your subconscious mind will help you to change your daily habits. So yes, absolutely, put it in front of you.
I'll have to write some positive notes for myself. I hope everybody has taken some tips away today, and hopefully your next dealings with some challenging customers are made a little bit easier. It will take, I think, a little bit of practice, but I know I have definitely learned a few things today. Not that any of our members are challenging, but I'm sure I can use some of them when I'm dealing with my 7-year-old this afternoon. So thank you, everybody, and have a great morning or afternoon depending on where you are in Australia, and I look forward to catching up with everybody next year. Thank you, Janice, for your kind words, and thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. I'll hopefully talk to you in the new year.
Sounds great. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.